G'day, it's Adam, VK for GHZ. In today's video, I'm going to show you my K3NG Rotator controller project and how it ended up. So we're going to mount the controller board and a 5-inch Nextion in the case. Case that cost $7.95 Australian. Worked out pretty well. Stick around because I'm going to show you what I did and hopefully it might offer you some ideas. Probably one of the most difficult aspects of a homebrew project is how am I going to mount this bastard? What enclosure am I going to use? When I first did the PCB layout for my particular controller board, I had an idea it would be in some sort of box, and I would probably double side tape that box to the top of the Yaesu controller, because I certainly didn't want to be drilling holes into it. However, as you can see, this scheme actually works out quite well. So the case I'm using is a ABS plastic case. They're called a Jiffy box in Australia. They're also known as zippy boxes, I think from years and years ago, but ABS plastic. The important thing here is the dimension, 197 millimeters by 113 by 63 millimeters. I have no idea what that is in imperial. Same box from Ultronics, $9.35. And of course you can get them on eBay. They're about 20 bucks, but they do come with free postage. So what I'm going to do now is walk you through the process of how I mounted everything. It's pretty tight for space in this particular box, but the result was okay in the end. Now, I didn't actually shoot any video during this. That was just a pain in the ass, so I took a montage of still photos, and I'll walk you through that. This is what it looks like mounted from behind. Now, there's various ways for putting a large cutout in a box. What I tend to do is draw a series of lots of small holes around the perimeter, pull that out. This is where a Stanley knife is. I think they're called box cutters in the States. You can use a series of holes and use a Stanley knife to cut the big chunk of the plastic out. Then you can just trim it up with a file. I'm using M3 bolts to mount the Nextion to the plastic, and as you can see, there's a bit of a chamfered edge on it. At the back of the box, what I'm using two M3 nuts as standoffs for the Nextion display. They worked out okay dimensions wise. The spacer for the control PCB is a 6mm M3 standoff, so it's female M3 female at one end and M3 male at the other. Three of them running along the rear edge where the connectors are, and in 3.2mm holes. I always give myself a little bit of wiggle room. Now I'm using countersunk screws. That's prior to being countersunk, and using a larger drill. Always do this by hand. I don't know if you've ever tried to drill plastic with a power drill, but you're in for a surprise. It'll just rip through it. So better off just using doing this by hand, and that's what the countersunk screws look like. I'm only using 3 of them at the rear where the connectors are, where there tends to be a lot of force. Now, as you can see, if you look towards the front of the case, there's not a lot of clearance there. Now, in hindsight, I should have mounted the Nextion up by about 5mm because there just simply wasn't enough room for the screw heads. It's pretty tight for space in there. No problem with the connectors, but they are sort of probably less than a millimetre away from the Nextion display. Just not enough room for a screw head, but you don't really apply a lot of pressure on the rear of the board anyway. All the forces where the connectors are plugging in and out. Now, the thing about ABS plastic is it's really easy to work with. Now, as you can see, with the board mounted, I can simply mark up where the holes for the connectors need to be. That's sort of going across the case, and of course you can, using a ruler, you can work out where the hole needs to start coming up. And it was just a matter of just doing one hole at a time and just progressively working through them. So there's the cutout for the DC connector. Now I've mounted the DIN connector there. Of course, always check that your actual connector body fits through the hole as you're going along. Next hole along. If I want an elongated hole, I will tend to drill 2 smaller holes, then just file out in between. That's for the USB connector. I had to file that out even more to actually accommodate the end of the USB plug. This is the RJ45 connection. Good thing being about at the back is that you know it's not on display, so you can sort of get away with a bit. There we go, we're progressing through. We've added the RJ45, the USB for the GPS pass-through. Now, ABS plastic is really easy to work with. A hand drill or a drill press if you've got it. Stanley knife there, box cutters, some files, and some cutters, and really that's all you need to work with the plastic. It's a lot easier than metal. Now, the only downside is that it's very soft, and throughout the whole process, and quite often this is unavoidable, is that you scratch the thing. So what I then do is I'll rub it over with some 240 grit sandpaper. So it takes the nice shine away, but it leaves you with a matte finish. Now, I've left it that way actually. So what you could do once you've got it, you've rubbed all the scratches out, you could then respray it with a gloss paint if you want to. And you can see the chamfer there around the Nextion cutout. So once the Nextion was mounted and the controller board was mounted, I then added, for my situation, because I'm using a linear actuator for elevation control, that's the PWM motor driver mounted off to the side there, and the 12 volts for the linear actuator go out to a coaxial DC connector on the rear. This is for the audible alert. This is actually quite a big piezo. I find they're nice and loud. They're really good. They're better than the little things you solder to a circuit board. And I've simply used some double-sided tape just to stick that on the inside of the enclosure. So that's everything mounted inside the plastic enclosure. What I then did was make up a mounting bracket. That's just simply using some aluminium bar, 20 millimeters wide by 3 millimeters thick, which is some scrap I just happen to have lying around at home. Now, if you've never bent metal before, it's pretty easy. You don't need any fancy tools. As you can see here, I've just got the bench vise and some aluminium with soft jaws. I make the first bend. You need to carefully measure where the next bend needs to be. I find using a piece of timber to help pull that over makes it really easy. Then I just roughly mark where the next hole will be on the other side and cut it off, file the edges, clean up the edges, round them, make them nice. Now to make it easy to slip the box in and out of the bracket, the way it's mounted, you will see that in a second, I put a cutout in just so it simply slides over. And that's how it's mounted. There's an M4 bolt, a washer, and an M4 wing nut. And that's the theory there. And it works very well. Put the washer on the inside of the mounting arrangement and you can do it up nice and tight. It doesn't move. That's how it looks like when it's finished. I could have sprayed the bracket black, I guess, but yeah, maybe another day. As you can see, having this type of arrangement means I can angle the enclosure to the same angle as the Yaesu controller. Whether this is an azimuth only or a G5500 is irrelevant. It's really nice and easy. If you have any doubt as to whether you want to spend the extra money for a 5-inch display, I would totally recommend it. 3.5 is nice, but the 5-inch Nextions are just so much better. So, for instance, I've got all my presets loaded. Long press of the preset, and we can see what presets I have set here. But it's just really nice. The 5 inches are nice. I know they're not cheap. I think they're it was about 80, 90 Australian dollars, but really easy to work with. You can see my hand, relative size comparison between that and the Yaesu controller here. So if you want to send it to a specific bearing, say 23 degrees, enter, and off it goes. So I reckon that mounting arrangement worked out pretty well. Alright, I hope this video has given you some ideas, some inspiration on how you might progress and mount your boards. I know there's lots of different microcontrollers out there. The Arduino Mega 2560 is very popular. I happen to be using a TNC 3.2 on a custom board, one that I did myself. So, you know, it's an $8 plastic box, but it doesn't need to be anything fancy, especially in a dark, dingy shack like this. So if you do like this type of content, please like and subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers.